I'm playing in a fifth tuned instrument. This is GDAE from low to high, so like octave mandolin. I do play in CGDA or CGDAE very often. So if you have questions on fingerings and such, we are happy to do that too. No matter what fifths you're in. I can. Is there any Chicago tuning people in here? Okay, cool. So if you do have questions about voicings, I'm happy to help you get there, but I probably won't know what's going on right off the bat. This class is sort of designed to help you through that process, actually. Sort of using the vehicle of this tune back home again in Indiana. I find that this is a really good one to know, and I've learned a lot from sort of diving deep into this one in terms of like helping me understand like what American jazz standards kind of tend to do, but that also applies to a lot of other music as well. Like a lot of the things that happen harmonically in this tune, like the chord structure of it, most other tunes have at least one, if not many more similarities with it. So it sort of shows you all the moves that you would kind of need at any point. And it's really good for ear training of like, oh, if someone said like in a jam session, yeah, this chord starts on the 6 or like the 2 dominant, I sort of can have an idea of what that sounds like in my head, really just from knowing this tune alone. There's a lot of cool stuff in here, and you might be hearing this and go like, oh, it's going to be frightening. There's going to be a lot of chords. But actually, there's not that many chords. And they all sort of use similar shapes. And a lot of other tunes use these chords and their functions in terms of the numbers. If I refer to something like a 1 chord, does everyone in the room understand what that sort of means? Mm-hmm. If not, that's okay too. Seeing mostly yeses, some okay, cool. So what I mean by that, just to make sure we're all on the same page here, because this will kind of make everything a little bit easier as we go too, is we're going to learn this tune, or learn about this tune in the key of F. So if everyone can find an F on their instrument, that'd be a great way to start here. We're going to learn a trick here for our 5th tune friends, but this will also apply to our non-5th tuned people too. Yeah, we're going to learn it in F major. So now what I want us to do is we're going to play an F major scale together. If you're on 5th tuned instruments, your hands will look like this. I'm going to get a cool trick with this. For major scales, you can do this in any key and put this shape anywhere on the instrument, which is the big advantage to 5ths, is that you learn something in one place, it's the same everywhere else. You've learned it everywhere else on the instrument, and that's why I love this instrument. So it's very logical. So we're going to play F, skip a fret, G, skip a fret, A, and then next fret is B flat. So your hand frame will look like this. You're going to have a space, and then close for 3 and 4. You can also finger this using like a slide of a 3, but for efficiency, this is the best way to do it, going 1st finger, 2nd finger, 3rd finger, 4th finger. So I'll do this together now. So 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th, and then 8th if you're in 5ths, or F, G, A, B flat. So we're gonna go 1, 2, F, G, A, and now B flat. Okay, so now here's the cool thing, and some of you probably already know this on 5ths, is if we do this exact same hand frame on the next string over, so hopefully you're playing this, I should have prefaced this, an F on like the D string. When you go to the A string now, your 1st finger will be on a C note, so find that for me and play that. So it should be 3rd fret on the A string, for example, if you played 3rd fret on the D string in 5ths. Great. And now we're going to do that exact same hand frame that we did on the D string for the next couple of notes. So now we're going to have C, skip a fret, D, skip a fret, E, and now next fret is F. Great. And do you notice how the hand frame here for our fifth tuning people is the exact same as it was on the string before? Does that sort of make sense? This is what I would call a closed finger pattern or closed scale pattern to make a major scale anywhere on the instrument. So that I could play, and I could do the same hand frame on putting everything a fret up, same thing a fret up, and I have a major scale everywhere that I start. So if someone was like, I don't know, you're working with a vocalist and they're like, yeah, let's play a song in a weird key like D flat. I'm gonna find D flat on my instrument, and now I can play that same pattern anywhere on the instrument. I've got a major scale just like that. This is really good if you're trying to play leads or figure out melodies by ear and you need a place to start and have some sort of grounding. This is sort of what I like to rely on and think about, because this helps me have stuff that I can grab and just know in my head what it's going to sound like as I get there. This is a really nice thing to have. So does that make sense? Not moving too fast? Cool. Okay. Let's all play that F major scale. We're going to go up and then we're going to go down. Sorry for our Chicago tuning friends if this is not the same in the same finger pattern, but how it goes. So let's give 2 beats for each note. 1, 2, F, G, A, B flat, next string C, D, E, and now F, and now let's go back down to E, and now D, and now C, and now B flat, and now A third finger, G second finger, F first finger. I'm going a little fast right now because I want to just sort of get as much into this workshop as you can. You can sort of develop the muscle memory and such as you wish in your own time, but that concept makes sense to everyone, how we're getting that closed scale finger pattern. So the cool thing again with this is, like, let's say someone called Indiana in the key of A flat. Now I can put my first finger on an A flat and I've got a major scale using the same hand frame for fifth tuning. And it's just like a good thing to know, because a lot of music that we end up playing in America is going to be using major and minor scales. So another thing with this too is, like, if I flat the third note of it, then I've got a minor scale, and you can flat and sharpen other notes as you wish to get different other scales, but that's sort of the idea here. So now, we're going to do this all again in slow motion here, but we're going to use numbers to sort of show what the notes are so that we can think more universally about this, hear how the notes interact with each other regardless of what key we're in. So, we're going to go to F. Find that F note again. This, for this workshop, is going to be known as 1. This is 1. And now G will be what? 2. What's A?
3.
B flat? What's 5?
C.
Good. And now what's 6?
D.
Good. E is?
7.
And F is? 8 or 1. Yep, yeah, exactly right. Cool. So this is what I'm talking about when we go into, like, referring to chords as numbers and such. Like, now if I sort of create groups of notes like F major as a chord, that's my 1 chord in the key of F because it's the first note in the major scale that we're in. And G would be our 2nd, and A would be our 3rd. B flat would be like my 4, and C would be my 5, D would be my 6, E would be my 7, and F would be my 1. And you can harmonize these, but we could go over that in a second, but that concept is clear, yes? How we're using the numbers to sort of show what things are. Okay, so now we've got all that out of the way here. Enough music theory nonsense for people. Indiana is a great tune. For a number of reasons. As I was saying earlier, it has a lot of, like, harmonic devices in the chord structure that you're going to hear bits and pieces of in other tunes. The melody, too, is really beautiful in that it uses a lot of the things that we hear in other pieces of music and has a great variety of them in terms of like the step and skipping motions of them, to create things that are really good for the ear to hear as like, oh, that's what that is, and you can hear these things in other songs. So I'm going to play just the melody by itself, no chords or anything. We're going to listen to this and try to get it in our heads a little bit here. And I guess the nice thing is this is being recorded, so you can come back to this afterwards and look at the hand shape and whatnot, and sort of discover that. We'll sort of get into the technical stuff maybe a little bit, but I'm trying to make this more of an idea of like, here's what we should be getting from this tune if I were practicing this and learning this at home, so that you get some takeaway now, but you have a lot to sort of bite off later too. All right, here's the melody. My foot is going to be the half note, I guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 is what I'm thinking. So it's got some pickups into it, which is really nice. 1, 3, 1. Your second half. That's the whole tune right there. So you might be, whose first time is this hearing this?
I think so. Yeah.
First time? Cool. All right, who's watched the Indy 500? Is that something of cultural relevance? Okay. They sing this at the beginning of the Indy 500. It's typically like a choral group, so they don't have like the jazz changes. It sounds like very like, back home again in Indiana. It's very like funny if you're like used to hearing, you know, like Buddy Emmons play this, for example. It's like it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's enjoyable. But anyways, that's the melody. We're going to learn just a couple bits and pieces of it. Again, you can go back on the recording and learn all of that. That was a very skeletal version of the melody, not too much embellishment or anything. But also learn it from a vocalist, or go look at maybe a lead sheet of it too, to see what the written music looks like. Look for the oldest version you can of it. This is something I like to do with like older standards like this, because a lot of times when you hear like modern like musicians play this, or like more instrumental people like interpreting a melody, sometimes what it is can morph a little bit. Yeah, like yeah, and like that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that's how they interpreted it. So it's sort of good to know like why they're interpreting it that way, or like how I could interpret it. Like, what do I like from the melody? What would I maybe change slightly or alter? Typically something I do when I learn the melody or learn a new song, and this is, again, bigger takeaway here for you, is like if I'm learning a new piece of music, these are things that I would recommend doing to really internalize it, so that I don't have to look at a chord sheet and go, okay, that's where it goes, F to D7. Like, I don't want to get sort of caught up in the technical stuff of it. I want to know how it sounds in my head and really internalize it that way. So that these are steps that I'm doing. And typically what I would say for that is learn the melody first, not the chord changes. And the reason I would say that, this is maybe a hot take, but like, I how does that go? I once said in a lesson, and it really like stuck with me, because I was talking about this with a student, that like chords, how did that go? Chords aren't real, but they do exist. And what I mean by that is like the chords that are associated with the melody here, like on that chord chart that we're looking back there, that's one way we could harmonize the melody. for example. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only way. That's just sort of the chords that are associated typically with the melody and how it's framed. But those could change. But the melody, like at its skeletalness, at its core, is what it is. Like Indiana is Indiana because of the melody, not necessarily because of the chords. This could be, again, a hot take, because one could argue like, oh yeah, but like because the composer wrote those chords with it, isn't that Indiana then? It could. The thing I would argue is it's associated with it. It's not absolute because you could reharmonize that. But if I started changing the melody, it might sound less like Indiana and not then actually be that. Does that sort of make sense on a like conceptual level?
Yeah, but then you can't improvise.
But
you improvise the melody, but you can't. You don't improvise on the chords.
Right, like
Chords are always the same.
Not always though.
Normally,
Yeah.
It's always the same, but the melody, depending on the musician, can change quite a bit.
Correct. Yeah, and that's sort of the thing that's interesting about it then is that like if I'm developing ideas in like an improvisational landscape, the melody is going to be the thing that I'm thinking about first, hopefully, rather than the chords.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think
Yeah.
on the same basis there. Yeah, it's
I mean,
sort of
I think of a melody as a vocal.
yeah,
Almost the melody the singer's singing.
totally. Yep, and that's how it should be. Yeah.
Because the playing is can be different.
Right.
You know,
Uh-huh.
you know who the musician is. Because he or she are improvising differently. The melody
Yeah,
can
right.
be-
That's the way that they're singing it, basically, then. Yeah, perfect. So, okay, that sort of makes sense. Yes?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, a couple things in the melody. We're going to either play or sing this together and or both. So, we're going to learn this, the first little bit of it, which is... Nice. So, this is going to be C, F, A, C. Can we all play that together? Find those notes. You're going to go C, F, A, C. Huh? Let's all play that together. And these are the pickups going into the downbeat at the top of the tune. So that high C that we're playing is actually beat 1. So the way I would count this would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Yeah, let's do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Nice. All right. Some of you might have more like experience with like music theory or terms associated with the sounds that we use. Does anyone know what this could be called? What we just played?
An
Like if
arpeggio.
yeah, an arpeggio, right? What is an arpeggio? Like if we had to define it.
Chord tones.
Chord tones, right? Which in another way of saying that is the chords that make up, or the notes that make up a chord. So this happens to be the notes that make up an F chord, which is the first chord that we have at the top of the tune, typically. And this is a really great device to have in our head because a lot of music that we learn in American idioms of improvisational music like to use arpeggios in the melody. So this is an arpeggio starting on the 5th and ending on the 5th. I could shape this in a lot of different ways. I could play this starting on the 1, which would be starting on F, ending on F, starting on A, ending on A for the 3rd, or starting on the 5th, ending on the 5th. And that's what we have in this melody. I could also break this down in different ways. I could have sort of using this as like a pattern that I could sort of scale and move up and down with, which is nice. And this is a great way to express harmony. This is something I think is really cool about arpeggios. A lot of people are maybe sometimes thinking like, okay, we learn all these chords, why should I learn arpeggios? Like, it's just the things that are in the chords, and they're notey, and they do things on the instrument, they run around. the main reason that I think arpeggios are really cool is they express harmony very clearly and in a lot of ways pretty completely, or at least typically in context they do. Like when you hear this, it feels like F, right? Like if I played this against an F chord, this just has the essence of it, which is really nice and very clear for the listener. It feels very settled and very sturdy in its harmony. Does that sort of make sense? Does that resonate with people? Sort of. Seeing some head nodding. Okay, good. Right, versus if I played something like this. Right, it's a little bit harder to tell what's going on with that. It's very jumpy versus this, which has some jumps but feels like it's all sort of in the same area. How about something like this? If I did something like that, that sort of feels more, maybe tonal is a word we'd use to describe it, or more consonant. That's like the start of a C scale in a vacuum. But it's also an F scale starting on the 5th and ending on the 2, which is sort of an interesting thing. We could delve into that, but that might be another lesson. Anyways, all this makes sense so far? Not moving too quick. Okay, cool. So this is one reason I love Indiana, is the opening gives this very clear idea of what the harmony setup is, and I think it's very beautiful. And now here's the cool like twist of the events is now we hear in the next phrase of the melody, and you know the melody of this, right? You were playing it earlier. Can you play the melody? I'm going to play the chords behind you. Alright, and we'll stop right there. Let's do that one more time. That's perfect. Great. Okay, so when we heard the melody on its own, does that sound like it's all from the F scale? Yes or no?
Seems like it went half a step down on the second phrase.
Half a step down. Okay, that's an interesting thing. Just from hearing the melody on its own, like if there were no chords behind it.
Yeah.
Do all those notes sound like they're from F major?
Yeah.
Yes, right. So, but then when you hear it with the chords, you hear this sort of like, whoa, what's happening, right?
Like a third.
Yeah, so you're bringing up a cool thing here. What's happening in the chords is we're going F to D7 to G7. And I'll give you some like 3-note voicings here if you're in fifths to play with this. So for F, I'm playing this, which is, I'm in G, but this still applies on C, G, D, A. So on the G string, I'm going A, 2nd fret, F, 3rd fret on the D, and 3rd fret on the A, which is C. So I get this F triad. So A, F, C from low to high. If we make that together. And then very smoothly, I'm going to keep that same voicing, but raise the middle voice up 1 fret. So I get this, which is A, F sharp, C from low to high, which is 2nd fret, 4th fret, 3rd fret. And this is what I'm playing as my D7, which may seem a little strange because there's no D in it. But the idea here is that I'm showing the 5th, the 3rd, the flat 7 of that chord, which is showing sort of the important voice leading from this and showing how it's different really from that F chord. And this is really fun with the melody because it's sort of changing how we interpret it, how we frame it, right? Into thinking like something is really moving, something is happening there. And the same is happening when we go to G7 right here, where I'm playing now B, G, D from low to high, 4th fret, 5th fret, 5th fret, as a 3-note voicing for 5th tuned players here. So now I'm going to do an experiment here. We're going to come back to this idea in 1 second. Can you play the melody again? I'm going to play some different chords this time. That all sounds like it works, right? Yes? No? Yeah, it seems fine. Okay. What was the chord that I was playing through all of that?
G.
F. Yeah.
Sorry. I
I was just playing the one chord throughout that. Now, here's another version. Can you play the melody again? Any ideas as to what chords I played there?
1, 2, 3.
Almost. I played 1, 4, 5, which would be F, B flat, C. It sounds similar. It's like the upper structures of those chords. Actually, that's a good guess. Right. But now I'm going to play something completely different. Can you play the melody again? All right. Any guesses as to what that was? No. Okay. Were any of those chords the same as the standard chords we were talking about?
They're just different fingerings.
Same
Chords, different.
Basically, except for the first chord. That time I played A7, going to D7, going to G7. Does anyone know what that is about?
That's the relative.
Circle of fifths. Yeah, exactly right. And that's actually what's sort of happening here in the harmony that's associated with this. So when we say the circle of fifths, it means that we're going like, for example, G to D to A to E. It's like our tuning if we're playing in fifths on tenor guitar or violin, mandolin, whatever. But it really means that it's a bunch of dominant chords or seventh chords moving in those bass notes, basically. Basically. That's sort of the cool thing about the harmony here, and this is a big takeaway from Indiana. Other songs, for example, like I think earlier today we played Sweet Georgia Brown, for example. We played All of Me, which has a lot of this motion where like we hear and like these are all examples of the circle of fifths in dominant chords moving through the circle of fifths. So it's something that you often hear in American songwriting from this era. And Indiana is a great... What is this?
It's for you.
It's for me.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just remember, I had one in my pocket. I don't know, it's a doodle scratch pad. But
I'm excited to see what this is.
I don't know, I forgot what it is.
Not much.
Got some notes.
Oh, it's the circle of fifths.
I've got some doodling on it.
Nice. Can I pass this around? Is that cool?
I don't know what my chicken scratching's on that. But
Nice.
I think there's a couple of authors on that page.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
pass it around.
yeah, so if you're wondering like what the circle of fifths is, this is sort of a great like illustration of it where you might start on C and you go around the circle of fifths and eventually you get back to C. You can do this.
On the going left, you're going down in fourths, but going up, you're going in fifths. That's a bit I never understood.
Yeah, we probably won't get into that in this class, but
time.
yeah,
Another
that's an
time.
idea. So if you want to see what that is in an illustration, this is a good example of it. But like if we're just hearing a song, for example, it would sound something like this. Like in Indiana, we have. And eventually we go around the circle of fifths and we get back to where we started. This is a great example. You hear this in the end turnaround too. Like if you look at the last line on there, we see F to D7 to G minor to C7 to F. Sounds something like this. Sorry, that was D minor here. And does this sound familiar to people? Like this is a sound we've heard before in songs that we've ran into. As I was mentioning earlier, Sweet Georgia Brown is a tune that does this very like directly. Like we start on the sixth. So if we were playing this in the key of G, that would be E7. Sounds like this. And then it goes to A7. And then it goes to D7. And then it goes to G. And then it resets to do it all again. And then it goes to A7. Sorry, it doesn't actually do that there. I was just getting lost in the circle of fifths. But yeah,
so a lot of jazz things, they follow a pattern.
Exactly. So Indiana is a great way to start learning how to do that. You're going to hear a very clear version of that. You're also going to hear what it's like to sit on the 2 dominant or the 2 major for a long time. And that's what's happening there in bars 3 and 4 in the first half, and then also in the second half it repeats it again, which is where we hear this note, this B, become sort of the like prevalent note in the harmony behind the melody, and it sort of like draws your ear in. You're kind of wondering like, oh, what actually changed? And it's because we're going around the circle of fifths. The thirds of that then sort of are not in the key that we originally started in, for example. So like if we looked at the D7 chord, the notes in that are D, F sharp, A, and C. Which note of that is not in the F scale? Any guesses? Those notes are D, F sharp, A, and C.
F sharp.
F sharp, right? It would be the flat 2 in F. It makes no sense. All right, so now in G7 we hear G, B, D, and F. Which note of that is not in F major? Any guesses?
B major.
B natural, right? It would actually be the sharp 11 or the sharp 4, the flat 5. There's a lot of different words we could use to associate with that. But regardless, those notes aren't in there. But all the other notes that I played around those are actually all in F. So there's a lot to relate it, but it sort of does these little pivots or kind of side steps.
So is there a rule is there a rule to put that chord in that chord in there that doesn't belong in there? Is there a rule for that?
Great question. No, and that's sort of the beauty of it. And this is sort of why I love this melody here, for example, because I guess you could call melodies like you could describe them in different ways. Like this is a very open melody versus like a very closed melody, right? Like I could hear this and interpret this again in a vacuum, like if there were no chords behind it. Forget that you've heard these chords for a second. There's a lot of possibilities as to what the harmonic framing of that could be, right? So like because the melody for a long time, and this is why this works, so if you wanted a rule, this is maybe how you could get there. Did you hear any F's in that melody? I know this is like a very tricky question maybe initially.
Well, yeah, when you started it out.
There's one,
Yeah.
but then after that, do you hear that pitch again?
Yeah, but you have other notes of the chord, of the arpeggio in there. So
Of the arpeggio, but you're shaking your head, right? There's no other F in there. So this is what I would say, it's like a harmonically open section, and this is what I love about being in the like harmony chair, the guitar chair often, is we can sort of determine the harmony that people are listening to. Can you play the melody for a second? So I'm going to give an example where it would be all diatonic or from just F, like F major. Can you play melody? And keep going just for fun. Keep going. All right, and now I'm going to play the chords that are typically associated with it. Different, right? Keep going? Yeah. Here's another different spot. Right here. Okay, both those were very different, right? Like they have a very different feel because it's playing with this idea that the listener is not hearing how that inner voice is moving with the melody, so I can actually really change how that frames it. So that's why, for example, the F sharp works where it's at in the D7. There's no F or F sharp in the melody around that, so it's up to the harmonizer to determine what the listener hears around the melody. Same with where we play the G7 for a lot of the time. There's no like B's or B flats that we're typically hearing with the melody in the, like this is where that's at, right? I'm not anywhere near, I don't hear either of those notes, so it could be either of them. And actually in the tune it is. That's why we see G7 and G minor right next to each other in the first couple of bars there. So this is what I mean when a melody can be really open, in that like it's not telling the listener everything, and it's not telling the harmonizer everything, so that it's not locked in to be just one thing. It could be many different things. Like I could then completely change the harmony too. Could you play it again? We'll see if I can do this.
Sorry.
You get? So that was the same, but now I could go. So like that's not a very great version of it, like in the way that it all worked together, but hopefully you see the idea that like, oh, like the melody is doing some things that mean some notes need to be maybe there or maybe not. Like even just on the first thing, for example, can you play the first phrase a couple of times for me? And now do that again. And now do it again. So, like, that landing point of the C at the top is a very good illustration of this. Those notes, the C and the F and the A, have this sort of gravity to them because they're in arpeggio. They shape a little bit of the frame that the listener hears going to that high C that we're landing on. But then once I'm there, I could maybe change the things surrounding it, and that draws the listener in. That's why harmonic changes are sort of interesting. Like, really the only part where the melody sort of goes out of F major is where we sit on G7 on that fourth line there at the end of the first half, where you see the start of the fourth line where it's G7 for 2 bars and then C7 and C augmented. Right there, the melody hits a B, and that's not in F. So that's very allowed or very consonant to play the G7 there, and maybe less consonant to play stuff that would typically be associated with F. So this is something I want you to take away from this, in that like melodies have moments where they're very structured and very like, this is the sound. But there are other moments where it's more open, and that's where stuff like this can happen in the harmony, where it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting that they went from there to there and used stuff that was sort of away from the key. That's why this stuff kind of works, even when the melody still sounds of the place we started. Does that sort of make sense? Cool. Okay. Versus sometimes like a fiddle tune, where like the melody is like this is what it is. Like if I played, for example, the first tune that comes to my mind when I hear that is like Fisher's Hornpipe, for example. It sounds like this. That's very... Sorry, you can really hear those chords in that melody, right? Does that make sense hearing them back to back? Why do you think that is? Any guesses?
They're very diatonic.
Very diatonic, and it's because it's just arpeggios and scales mashed together of the chords we're in, basically. Like this, start of a D scale, D arpeggio, G, like, stuff. Like, that's the start of a G arpeggio, but then going down the scale, and then ending on E, which gives us that sort of 5 unresolvedness of it. That sort of makes sense in theory. We won't spend too much time there, but that's an example of something that might be more of a closed melody in my mind, where it's like there is stuff that I could do to it, but it would be maybe more forced potentially.
Until I heard Chris Thiele and Mike Marshall in the call or out of the cauldron.
In the cauldron record. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I didn't think it could be improvised on.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly not to that extent.
Sure, and that's where you get into other things outside the harmony too, where it's like using space and rhythm and timbre, like all that stuff adds to what we can use musically. Like right now, we're really focusing on just the harmony, not too much of the rhythmic stuff, but that stuff is also very important in making things feel how they are. Or like how sturdy they are. That's something I like to think about a lot when I'm looking at something compositionally, and that's something I feel is like very strong about Indiana in particular. Other questions, if we have them so far?
So when you were messing around with the different chords, were you just did you have a thought what chords you were playing? I mean, I'm sure you did, but are you just throwing chords out?
I'm trying to, in my head, hear like how those notes are, I think, are going to interact with the melody. And I have some knowledge because I've done this for a while now, where it's like, oh, that shape would sound good, but I'm hearing the shape before I'm thinking about, that's an A minor, for example. This is exactly how John Lawler thinks, actually. I mean, not exactly. His is incredibly clear. And, like, that's the thing I also want to, like, reiterate with this. When we learn tunes in this fashion, where we're learning the melody first, and we're thinking about the shapes and the intervals, we're actually hearing them first. That's sort of what I want people to take away from this, is that, like, when I now hear, I'm actually hearing that maybe in my head, like if I were to catalog things and have sort of a memory bank of tools people use to write tunes and melodies, I'm hearing that as like, oh, that's clearly an arpeggio. I'm hearing that fourth, I'm hearing that third, and then I'm hearing that third again. That screams arpeggio to me, and that really shows the sturdiness of, like, it's probably an F chord. Not necessarily. There's other options that it could be, but that's where that's coming from, hopefully. So that we're hearing these things first, and then going back and looking at the shapes of them and looking at the intervals and being like, that's what that is. That's something that I take away a lot from this tune. And to go further into that for a second, because there's a couple more devices here that I want people to take away from this. We have, at the end of the second line, going into the third line. Sorry, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Okay,
so we see F going to F7, going to B flat, going to B flat minor, going to F. I want to look at this because this is a really important moment in this, and a big takeaway, hopefully, of things that you can find in other tunes that you might encounter learning. The numbers that we have here would be 1 for F, going to 1-7, which really just means that we're adding an E flat to this F chord, or a flat 7 to it, to show the voice leading down to the 4 chord, which is B flat in this instance, and then B flat minor, which which is the 4 minor. And this is a really beautiful change and something that you hear in a lot of music from this time. I often say that like the 4 minor sort of like has like a big gravity to it, right? Like if I were playing these chords just by themselves, that's got a real like nice strong like sort of beauty to it. And this is something that's really cool about 4 to 4 minor. A lot of tunes use this. A tune that you might have heard today if you were at the lunch was All of Me. This happens at the end of All of Me. This is the big dramatic moment where the melody's going right there. Do you hear how we hear this? It has this pull to it, and then it goes back to the 1. This is the exact same thing happening in Indiana right here. A different melody, same chord changes associated with it. This is a great way to categorize this in your head because a lot of tunes do this from this era where they have this 4 to 4 minor kind of pull to it. So big takeaway there. That's a device that happens a lot. Know that that could be something that you'd hear in a jam session for a tune from this era or not from this era too. One other thing I want to look at here too in terms of the harmonic stuff happening is sort of near the end. And this is also a beautiful thing about the relationship of the chords that are associated with this tune and the melody. The melody in both halves starts the same. It sounds like this. The first 8 bars and the third 8 bars sound exactly the same. But can you see how the chords are different in both of these things? Like if you look at the first 2 lines, and then you look at lines 5 and 6. Lines 1 and lines 5 are exactly the same. We have F to D7 to G7. But then you see things start to change here. In the first version, we hear G minor going to C7 to F. And this is what we call a 2-5-1 in jazz. This is a very common thing that you'll find when you learn tunes from this era and this idiom is you hear things like this all the time. You'll hear this in many different tunes. Like it's everywhere. It's a cool thing because it's a great way to resolve going back to the 1 or make something sound like the 1. But what you'll see is the second version here is what we call a minor 2-5-1. And this is this E half going to A7 going to D minor. So like if I wanted to, let's say, modulate to a key or go to a different key center, make something sound like the home, a 2-5 is a great way to do this. Because if you look at maybe D minor, for example, we could call this the 1, and the 2 for it would be E half, like if you go up a whole step from D, you'd get E, and a 5 away from D is A. And this is now creating this minor 2-5 in D minor. The big difference between a major 2-5 and a minor 2-5 is the 2. The 2 is going to be a half diminished or a minor 7 flat 5 in the minor 2-5. And then, yeah, I'm going to get into the voicing so you can hear it in a second. And then in a major 2-5, the 2 is just a minor chord. And the 1 is sort of self-explanatory. The 1 would be major in a major 2-5-1. In a minor 2-5-1, the 1 is a minor. So, what does all that jargon mean? Why am I telling you this? The main thing that's happening here is we're enclosing the 1 in 2 different ways with different bass notes. That's basically what's happening here. So if we wanted, how do I do this quickly? Can you play the melody for me again? Just the first 8 bars, and we're going to do it twice through. I'm going to play the first way, the major way in the first 2 lines the first time, and then the minor way in lines 5 and 6 the second time.
Okay, one more time.
Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's that major 2-5. And now let's do all that again. We're going to play lines 5 and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That was pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah. So it's a really sneaky way of going to a different thing.
But you're not really going to a different key. You're not really modulating.
Like a relative minor.
Yeah, so you guys are already picking up on this. So D minor is the 6th minor in the key of F. Like if we go back to that major scale that we started with earlier, we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And an easy way, like if you're hearing a tune that's in a major key and it suddenly goes minor, more than likely it's going to be a 6 minor, which is also known as the relative minor because it shares basically the same notes as the 1 major chord. That's what I want you to take away from this. Is that like a good example of this would be like sometimes in You Are My Sunshine, for example, you might have heard people put in like a minor chord near the end of the form in that earlier today. That was the 6th minor. That was a relative minor. And it seems like we're going to a different place, but we're actually not. We're just doing sort of a crafty way to trick the listener and be like, oh, that was minor. Create some drama, which is sort of fun. But also, you hear how it was the same melody, but it was a beautiful way of making the same melody feel different. That sort of resonate with people. This is a really cool moment in this tune. So this is something else I want you to take away from this tune, is that this is a great way to hear and internalize what a minor 2-5 sounds like going to the relative minor. And a great way to hear how a 2-5-1 can get us back to the 1, right? Because before that, we were on that G7, which we were talking about earlier as like, that's sort of outside of the key. It's got a note that's not in the key in it. But then suddenly, we hear a 2-5 going to the 1 and like, we're back home again in Indiana. That sort of makes sense with everybody here. Cool. Okay. I want to make sure I'm not going too far over time. 5:20 here, so I'm going to fit in just a couple more things if people are okay with that. All right. So, what haven't we covered yet? The F diminished at the end of that minor section right there. Can you play for me? Does that make sense where we're at, like the last 8 measures of it?
Yeah, okay.
Great, yeah. So this is going to be the last 2 lines of the chords. Let's do that one more time to make it really clear.
Yeah.
Here's D minor, going to F diminished. Oh, I completely screwed that up. One more time, sorry. E half, A7, D minor. Here's the F diminished. And now F, D7, G minor, C7, F. So, that F diminished right there, big moment, right? Because it got us from this minoriness to all of a sudden like, oh, something happened. And now, I'm back to F. This was really cool. This is another device that you'll see in a lot of tunes from this era, where we might be in a relative minor, or maybe we're in like the 2 minor kind of area for a second. And this, yeah.
It sounds like a resolution device. Like it's a way that you sort of twist it.
Exactly
into
right.
A resolution, right?
Yep, yeah, because it's using the F that's in the D minor, which is actually the 3rd of D minor, and sort of drawing us from that with some half steps back to F. So like if I were to take a 3-note voicing like this is an easy one to get here. So for F diminished on like tenor guitar in fifths, I would maybe play A flat, F, and B natural, which would be 1st fret on G, 3rd fret on D, 2nd fret on A. If you're in Chicago tuning, you probably would be able to grab a voicing similar to this. And then here's the really cool thing. That F is going to stay the same, but those other 2 voices are going to go up a half step. So now I have A, F, and C, or 2nd fret on G, 3rd fret on D, which stayed the same, and then 3rd fret on A for C. So if you look at my hand, the note that we're going, like the F is going to stay the same in the middle, but then these notes are going to go up a half step, and now suddenly we've resolved into F. That's exactly right. You'll find this in a lot of other tunes too, where they might be sort of in a precarious place harmonically, and they're like, I want to go back to the 1. Boom. One diminished chord, and now we're going to be back to it, basically. So that's another great way that you can hear that from Indiana, from learning this tune, and then you're in a jam session, and you're like, whoa, I heard a diminished chord, and it sort of sounds like we're back to where we were. This is a great way to internalize that change, and again, have a device in your head from just one tune about how to hear these things in other tunes, hopefully.
A simple way that a rootless 5/7 chord,
Rootless 5/7,
which
chord.
is the diminished triad.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a simple way to think of it.
Sure.
Church pianists do it all the time to change keys.
Yeah.
They'll hit the 5/7
Yep.
and then the 1, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a very similar idea in that
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. It's just using some like upper structure stuff from that, basically. Yeah. Very, very true though. So, yeah. In terms of like, here's why I would learn this tune. These are some of the big reasons. Is because you're going to learn this one tune, and you're going to come away with most of the harmonic devices that you're going to find in most other like jazz standard kind of tunes from this. Not everything, but a lot of them. And this is going to be really helpful even if you aren't playing jazz or sort of tunes from this sort of idiom. You're going to hear like, oh, that's a creative way to go from 1 to 4, or that's a 5 chord, or that's a 2 chord, for example. It's a really good way into this. You're going to glean a lot from taking that away. Plus, in the melody, we've got arpeggios. We're starting to learn what an open melody sounds like. That's a pentatonic scale, for example. There's a lot of stepwise motion, but sort of sequencing it in a way that's like, which is really just a scale pattern where I'm skipping every other note and then starting that in different places. So it's a very creative way of making variations on a major scale, which is really cool. Great way to sort of gain vocabulary from not too many notes to pick from, but use them in sort of creative ways, which is cool. And then one other thing here real quick, if I could squeeze this in. The ending of this, I think, puts a really beautiful bow on the melody. It sounds like this. And this is, I think, a really pretty ending to the tune, because we haven't really heard, that's not true, we've heard this twice now in the melody, but it always goes away. Right? That feels sort of unresolved, or it's gone to a different place, which is cool. But now what it's doing is it's walking us back. And this is happening in the last line here. Can you play that for me? I'll play the chords behind it. Sorry, can I count you in? I'll catch you. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a really great way of hearing that 2/5 then underneath it. Again, if we wanted to get into the argument of like chords aren't real, play it one more time. That's a way to go to the relative minor, for example, at the end of the melody. But either way, I think it's a really, again, a cool variation of like, it still in shape sort of went downwards, but it did it in this really beautiful way of using the 4 of the melody. That has a very nice pull to it because we haven't heard that yet in the melody from that strong fragment of the arpeggio leading up to that 5th. And that gives it this really nice completeness to it. So that's something else that you could take away from this is like, okay, I heard that melody note and it sounded kind of like that one moment in Indiana where I'm hearing that 4 and I'm just going to know now that's what a 4 sounds like from hearing a melodic fragment like that. Because it's so clear and vivid and specific and intentional. It's really, really cool. So, hopefully this all sort of made sense. I know this is mostly conceptual, not too much playing right now. But hopefully the idea behind this is that this is going to give you stuff to take away in your own practice where you're like kind of maybe checking out some of the theory and learning it on your instrument, but really hearing it and knowing what you're hearing so that when you go to other tunes and you're learning tunes and jams or you're playing things that you don't know but you're hearing stuff, you're hopefully going to kind of know, that was that moment in Indiana. That was that moment in Indiana. That was that moment in Indiana. It's got a lot of things in it that are very rich in terms of things you would hear typically. I guess another thing I would encourage you to do is like, if there are tunes that you know really well, for example, like maybe similar to this or not similar to this, see if you can create your own chord changes to things. I think this is probably how I've learned the most about this stuff and how to use it in a real world application. The idea, this is like, again, a whole other different class, but like, one thing that I think is strange about a lot of the pedagogy, like the way in which stuff is taught in terms of like 5th tuned comping and like backing people up, is we really love structure for some reason. And the reason for that is we like to know things are sturdy and that they work, and we want to find a thing that works, and we want to like really know that thing and know that in any circumstance it's going to work. That's what we want. But we often then sort of have oversights with this in that like, but there were like 3 other things over there that could be kind of a cool thing. But because I'm staying to the structure, I don't know what those other things are. So my big point here is like, we take a lot of time when we're like learning leads and playing solos of like really having sort of like a open-mindedness to things and like hearing what we play and being able to hear it and like sing it and play it at the same time, for example. We should think the same way when we're comping, actually. Like when we're choosing chords and voicings to put behind melodies, I want to be able to have the same brain space that I'd use when I'm taking a solo as I would when I'm backing someone up, and that I'm really playing it with intention. I'm not playing it just because the chord chart said to do that and I know that is an F chord if I put my fingers here. I want to know more about, why am I playing an F chord here? Like, are there other things that I could play there?
It says that in the paper.
Sorry?
It says that in the paper, playing F chord.
Right, yeah. And
Could it be as easy as just following the melody and trying to stack some notes underneath it that make sense?
That's kind of what I'm saying is like...
the voice leaded.
That's what I'm saying about like, there were 3 other things over here that I didn't check out. Like, that's sort of what we were doing when we were looking at like different things from just that one moment in the...
You seem to be voice leading on the bass note there.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, you could get into is like the bass is super important. The inner voices are super important. Why am I playing bass notes? Why am I playing inner voices? This is all sort of things that like we can artistically choose to play or omit. And I think that's a lot of fun, especially about the tenor guitar, is we can only play 4 notes at a time if we play them all. And compared to a piano player, that's
Well,
actually...
you play 5-string normally.
normally, but not even on that. I'm
It's
not
cool.
always
It's
playing
cool. You
5...
have, like easy range for any key.
Yeah, but sometimes it gets muddy too. There are disadvantages with it. I have to be choosy about why would I play all the notes or why would I play some of the notes. So do you see what I'm saying sort of about like, this is why I want to be intentional and sort of take things like this away from just one tune. I want to know it so well that when I hear the same thing happen in another tune, I know what that is and I can feel it and hear it rather than just know, oh, that was a 1 to a 4. I want to know what that sounds and feels like. I want to know what a 4 minor does to the melody and how it interacts when there's a 2 on the top of it or a 6 on the top of it. Or those are different sounds. That's a different sound, and it all makes a difference. Or it can all make a difference, I guess. It's not something that someone gets maybe overnight, but it's something that keeps me coming back to the instrument and keeps me coming back to these sort of tunes, is that there's a lot of this stuff in there that's actually really rich and really affects how a listener perceives what we're playing.